Hello. Hello, I'm Dr. Margaret Rogers Van Coops. We all watched Harry and Meghan's wedding, and I'm sure we all shed lots of tears. In fact, I even made a talk about this earlier. But something has stayed with me that really wants to share, not just because I'm a senior, but because the younger children today, I feel, really need to understand and know what it was like back in the turn of the century. And I'm old enough to know because I was born in 1942 during a bomb blitz. That means when the Germans were sending over bombs to hit the houses and the factories and anything else they thought was viable to kill off the British. Yes, the Germans were invading us, or so they thought. But hey, what did I know about all that? I was a little girl. I was born when a bomb blast went off, and you can read about that in my book, My Journey into the Oneness. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is conditioning. When I was born, I was told that I had to behave all the time. No matter what I said or what I did, it had to have a purpose. It had to have a reason in some way that I was going to show and tell who I was in a polite way. Now, of course, the first few years of my life I don't remember much other than the bombing. But when my father came home, I went to school. Now, the thing that I didn't understand then was that the church school that I went to was full of boys and girls brought from the East End of London. They were what my parents called the ruffians' kids. Every day I came home with bruises. Can you imagine that you're trying to play with your friends, say hopscotch or something, a game where you throw a stone and jump and hop and get it and then pick it up and hop back again, to have some boy come and rush at you and push you over, or to be trying to do handstands in the playground, to have someone rip your arms away from under you so that you fall on your head, or have someone come up and pull your pigtails and tell you you're hoity-toity. Well, I can tell you that every day at that school, for all the religious philosophy we were given, it didn't make any difference. You see, I felt abused every day, and I went home crying, and my mother and father said, well, we'll see what we can do. But I knew that they couldn't afford to put me into the private school that they wanted to put me in. Well, a couple of years went by, and I put up with that, and I was finally 7. And I was told that I was going to go to a private school. I was elated. I was going to get away from all those ruffians. But the thing that my father said to me really shocked me at that time. He said, "You do not speak the Queen's English. You've learned to speak like those ruffians. We are going to make sure that you learn to speak proper Queen's English," which actually was King's English in those days. So I was put into this new school, and I was given elocution lessons. You don't say book, you say book. You don't say cow, you say cow. So everything was emphasized to pronounce every letter, every word well. Well, of course, I don't speak the way I used to speak. Now I've been Americanized. In fact, I've been worldwide because I've traveled to so many countries teaching. But the thing is, back in those days, I remember my grandma sort of on edge. I found out that while I was visiting, my great-grandma was coming to visit. So I was in the living room playing, and she'd arrived, and I was told eventually by a servant that I could run in and meet my great-grandmama. So I went rushing in, probably about 3 or 4 years old, but old enough to know. See this stranger sitting there in a long frock. Yes, we used that word then. And a big hat. A hat that came out right out here and forward on her face, casting shadows. So this is all I could see of her face. And I walked up to her and I looked up at that hat. And I asked her, "Why are you wearing the hat indoors?" And she pushed her head up, making sure I could see that she was looking down her nose. And she said, "Children should be seen and not heard. How dare you talk to me before I invited you to talk?" And her daughter, my grandmother, said, "She's only a child. She hasn't been taught yet." So I was told to leave the kitchen and run out into the living room once more. That was a moment I never forgot. I never met my great-grandmama again. She passed on soon after that. But it impressed me that I had to behave. When I went home again, back to school, I was taught how to walk upright with my head high, with a book on it, so that I wouldn't drop it, so that I would look like this, as you see me now, looking down my nose at where I was walking. Can you imagine if you're a young person today being made to behave like that? And then, when I went to what we call big school, I was trained in the arts of sewing, knitting, embroidery. I was trained how to make my own dresses. Yes, I was quite good at it too. I became a designer, designed my own dresses, cut them out, sewed them together, wore them at the events at school, and I felt wonderful. But there was always someone who would come up and say, "Oh, did you make that horrid dress?" and make that face. Or, "You think you're so great, I'm better than you." There was so much competition in this school that I was at, a school for ladies, a grammar school, a school where you were supposed to learn at least 2 languages. Mine was French and Spanish. French wasn't too bad. Spanish was awful. My English was terrible. So my teacher said. Everything I did was put down. I was never good enough. The girls that were and maybe are today, good enough, they had high ideas. They wanted to be vets, colonels in armies, doctors, lawyers. I wasn't sure about anything. All I knew was I wanted to help the sick and the suffering. And the only way I thought I could do that would be to become a nurse. When I told my father looked down his nose and said, "How dare you, a daughter of such descent, a daughter of royalty, how can you want to be a skivvy and go and wipe bottoms?" It hurt me. I was 15. How could my father be such a snob? How could he look at people in such a way and say they're not good enough? Over the years, I'd had many friends, so I thought I'd taken them home. He cross-examined them. "What's your father do? What's your mother do? Who are they? Do they have ancestry?" And when they'd gone, he would calmly look at me and say, "You are not seeing them again. They are not our class." So what was our class? Well, I was told many, many times that my grandfather on my mother's side went to play chess at the palace with the king of the day. And I was told that on my father's side, my grandparents were constantly invited to balls and dances when they were in this country at the palace. I was told that back 200 years or so we'd been royals, intermarried, and even further back that we came from the Depoge family, who became known as Pogsons because the locals, the English, couldn't pronounce French. So it's kind of ironic that I was taught to speak French. But here I was saying, what does this matter? My mother has no money. She can't afford a new dress. I have to wait till a birthday comes around before I can choose something from the shop that would be new, not second-hand, not a pass-me-down. You see, I'd grown up with post-war trauma. I didn't know it then. But post-trauma, what was it all about? It was about not enough food, not enough cakes, milk, tea, whatever it was. Everything was rationed. And we all had ration books. And we got in line. And when we got to the butcher, the candlestick maker, or whatever it was we needed, he would take our books, cut out a tiny little square, put it in a tin, and then weigh out a weight, a pound of something, a quarter pound, 2 sweets, just for children. Something simple, but I was grateful. 2 sweets was better than none. By the time I was 15, we were rebuilding London. New buildings were going up. It was a new generation, my generation, starting to think for ourselves. We had lots of political things going on in the world. There was lots of wars going on. We were learning to duck under our desks in case there was a nuclear fallout. We were in fear. Fear that our life would end any second. Now, England was pretty safe by then. You could walk down the street at night, and the worst thing that would happen is you'd get whistled at by some drunks. Not today. It's different. But back in those days, it was still possible to be hurt. One time I was coming through the park, and 4 boys tried to get me. I was fit, I was strong, I was a runner. I kicked out, I did everything I could, and I escaped. But not without trauma. You see, I lived with trauma throughout those years. And when I finally did get my father to give me permission to nurse, he let me go to work at a hospital called the Home and Hospital for Incurables. I was so eager. What I didn't know is this was a place where people were sent to die. The insane, the miserable. People with hands so gnarled with rheumatoid arthritis that they couldn't even straighten their hands. People who'd been found in bomb raids, who'd been so long trapped that their bones were trapped and stuck, unable to move them, unable to bring them life to their limbs and arms again, stuck in this awful place. And even more importantly, it was full of earthbound spirits. Their friends, their families worried about them, who'd passed on, maybe bombed out, killed. I don't know. Or maybe just passed on through shock. But they were there. And wherever I walked along the halls, I heard their calls. I heard their crying. I heard their misery. I heard their pain. And in my soul, I knew that I'd come to the right place. And even now, as I talk to you about this, I want you to know that that was my lesson in understanding that wherever you are in this world now today, if you are in pain, if you feel you're forgotten, if you feel that you're lost, if you've watched your loved ones die in a bomb explosion, whatever it is, I know how you hurt, because I hurt too. You cannot erase the devil of the war, for that's all it is, a devil of rage, a devil of anger, a devil of ownership and control. It was a summation of the first spiritual age. What is yours can be mine. I want it. I'll take it. If you're a woman, I see your body. I want it. I'll use it. I'll have it. And so I grew up saying, I don't care if I have a royal background. I don't want to go to a finishing school. All I care about is becoming a nurse or a doctor. I wasn't sure which, but I wanted to change the world. I wanted the world to be a better place for us all to live in. I had high hopes. I had a deep wish I'd carried from my early years. So by the time I became a nurse, 19 years old, I'd studied biology, anatomy, physiology, theology, psychology. I'd studied it all. And I was shocked to see that we had not let go of the class distinction. There was still the upper class, the royalty. There were still those who were middle class, those who were lower middle class, those who were working class, and those who were transients. So I had to be married. I had to do the things that women are supposed to do. 2 marriages later, I learned through suffering, and I won't bore you with my stories, that I watched women rise up. Women had to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, and the only thing they could do was prostitution, or work for some boss who abused them and misused them, touched them up, if nothing more. And yes, it happened to me, and yes, I survived it. But more importantly, I was experiencing that need to express myself as a woman. I was needing to be strong, powerful, free, and independent. But when I looked at the men who were supposed to be all those things, I saw weakness, great weakness. I saw fear. I knew they didn't understand women. They didn't understand me. I knew I understood their pain. I understood my father's pain and all that he saw during the war, for I saw it in unity, in oneness. His heart was broken. He was in post-traumatic stress disorder, which wasn't even said in those days. It was keep the stiff upper lip. Don't say anything. Pretend it doesn't hurt. But it did. It hurt many. And that generation have about now passed on. The 19-year-olds that went to war and survived are the 90-year-olds that are dying today. And with it goes their history, their ideas of class. We fought a long battle of freedom and independence. We've asked for rules and regulations around the world to be changed. And it has, little by bit, bit by little, up and down. And here we are today, women saying, we want to be able to say we own our bodies and we can make our choices. I was forced to make that choice without a doctor. You see, upper class children, not married, don't produce a baby. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't tell anyone until I wrote my book, Pro-Life, Pro-Choice, Pro-Spirit. And in that book you'll learn that everything is prepared ahead of time. That we owe it to our ancestors and to our spirit guides to follow through with our promises. That we will stand up and speak for ourselves. That we will make our choices about who we are and what we have to say as women. But at the same time, We have to understand that while the women were changing, so were the men. And over time, my dear father, who was such a snob and so arrogant, softened. He once told me that I could never walk beside a black person. They were slaves. When he ended his life, all his friends were black people, and he chatted with them all. At the end of his life, he saw no difference in anyone because he had learned that to love unconditionally was to love everyone. And the irony of it, I told him that when I was 5.5 years old, that we have to learn to love everyone before we can be peaceful, before we can say we are individual people with individual feelings, with individual thoughts that we've made for ourselves. So now I'm speaking to the young mothers of today. You would be in my category, my grandchild, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. You will be the mothers of the children to come. I wrote a book, Discover Your Baby Spirit. If you're 21, 17, you are either a hero, star, indigo, crystal, or liquid crystal child. What does that mean? You have a cause. You have a purpose. It's revealed in that book, Discover Your Baby Spirit. But more importantly, discover you. You're coded with what you want to do. You are going to do whatever you came to do. Whether you do it in the dark or the light, you leave a lesson for others. Here's an example of one in the dark. A young girl I know committed suicide. Everyone was so surprised because she always seemed so happy, always laughing, full of fun. But I knew she had a dark secret. She was in pain because she gave so much love to everyone and everyone took it, that they never stopped to say, does she need love? What's going on at home with her? One day she told me she wasn't well. She had leukemia. I sat with her on the grass. We were 17 years old. And she told me, I can't put my mother through more pain, trying to believe that I am going to recover. There is no cure. I will die. And I said to her about the spirit world and how it was and how it would be and how she would love it because I'd been there and seen it myself. And she said, I know, I've seen it too. And then she looked at me and she said, thank you for being with me and being my only friend. And she got up and walked away. The bell went, we went into class. I don't know where she went, but the next day there was news in the school when we all gathered, and they said she had passed away in the night. No one said anything then about the pill she'd taken, but I knew. You see, women had the idea in those days that there was no alternative. There was nothing new. So, if you can't fulfill what you came to do, end it. Get it over with. We've had a war. Many people died. What's one more? But what's one more life that lives? Someone who, through the suffering and the pain, the toils, the trials, the tribulations of life, sees it all for what it is, a test, and goes through it and comes out the other end a survivor. Are you a survivor? Are you the mother of a child that is extremely new to this world. They have an extra DNA, an extra strand in the DNA, I should say. And what they are going to do is change this world. And how they change it all depends on how you rear your child. Your child needs you to sponsor them in everything they need to do, to be there, to pick up the pieces, to encourage them to carry on in spite of the difficulties, to help them overcome their insecurities, their fears and their anxieties, to see what is happening in this day, to see that these children who are confused are picking up guns and shooting others in revenge for what? They don't know. All they know is there are voices in their head. There are people out there screaming, shouting, yelling in pain, and they can feel it because they're psychic, just like me. So I'm here to say, if you have a child who seems to be in some way disturbed, stop whatever you're doing and say to them, did you hear something? Did you see something? Did you feel something? Do you know something? I'd like to learn from you. I'd like to learn with you what's going on. I'd like to grow with you and be a part of everything that you do. I'd like to fill your heart with joy that you know that you have a skill that will say one day, I understand the pain and suffering of this world. And because I understand it, I am going to go out into this world and change it, improve it. We will clean this world. We will cleanse it of all the bad. We will bring joy back into life. We will learn to dance again, to sing, to enjoy the arts. That's why there are so many children being born right now who are natural artists. And there are also many children who are great scientists. The parents don't understand them. They can't. It's a new generation. But what you can do is become the pupil of your child, supporting them in social ways, supporting them in unconditional love, so that they can go into this world, as Jesus said, and love one another. I suffered a great deal in many ways, marriages, children, ups and downs, work, but I never gave up on you, the world. I never gave up on the people of the world, and I will never give up. I will continue until I die to be there for anyone who needs help. So, on this note, I want to say there is a future. It's a new age. It's called the second spiritual age, where we will not talk of pain and suffering, of bombs. We will not talk of destroying one another's businesses. We will talk of amalgamating, uniting, sharing, understanding, loving, no matter the religion, no matter the philosophy, no matter the conditions. We will be there for one another, because we are human. And as humans, we have a soul, a heart. Share it. Let someone feel you in them, and you feel them backwards into you. Find that unity. Find that love. Just like Harry and Meghan. Their love has changed the royal family, and with it will change the rules and regulations of how we bring up children in our future. We are intermarrying. We are becoming one race, the human race. and we are free to be individual without dominating and destroying one another. Debates are interesting. Listening to one another's music is sweet. Hearing the voices of many languages is divine. So let yourself be a part of the oneness where all is known, where all is loved, where everyone, whether they're in the dark or the light, is doing exactly what they need to do to create friction, resonation, reverberation, and light. So if you're in a negative mood right now, yes, you're disturbing the force. You're creating light. And if you are in the light, then perhaps it's time to receive a hug. Let someone know you for your journey, as I hoped I've shared mine with you today. Thank you for listening to me. I love you.